Hi guys! So in my Year of George Eliot film, I said that that would be my only solid challenge of the year. But since I filmed that video, I decided that I was going to take on a couple of other classics related challenges, and I wanted to tell you guys about those. So the first one is actually a really broad challenge. It's called the Classics Club, and it's a blogging challenge. Both of these actually are technically blog challenges, and I do have a blog that I have done a very terrible job of keeping up with, and it is linked below. My two posts about the two challenges I'm going to discuss are in the description box, so go check those out. But the first one is called the Classics Club, and the Classics Club is for people who want to commit to reading at least 50 books in no more than 5 years. And by 50 books, I mean 50 classics. And I thought that sounded like it would be a great way to have a community that would be a little bit supportive and encouraging and help me continue to read broadly as my academic reading gets narrower and narrower over the next 5 years as I continue with my PhD program. If I set the goal at exactly 50 books, which I did, that boils down to 10 books a year, and I think that's doable for me. I read quite a lot more classics this year, and I can always change the list if I feel like I need to revise it to shorter books or something so that I can achieve it. But anyway, it seemed like a fun challenge, and I'm gonna take part in that. So that's a big list. It's 50 books. I'm gonna get to them sometime over the next 5 years, so I'm not gonna talk about them specifically here. The list is in the link in the description to the Classics Club post, so you can check it out over there. The other challenge is a little bit more specific. This is the Back to the Classics 2019 challenge, and it's hosted by blogger Books and Chocolate, and so I'll link the challenge description and then my own post down below. And so she has 12 categories for books, and I honestly haven't actually quite determined what I'm going to read for all of these categories. I have a little bit longer to decide, but I'll talk about that as I get through them. So I thought I would share the categories in the books that I picked and a little bit about why I picked each book, and you can let me know if you've read any of these or if you are interested in doing a kind of YouTube version of this challenge. So the first category on this list of 12 is a 19th century classic. So for that I picked George Eliot's Mill on the Floss, which is published in 1860. And you'll notice as I go through this list that George Eliot is on here quite a lot, and that is because of my year with Eliot. I worked 3 of the 4 books of hers that I want to read onto this list because I'm trying to not do too much, even as I have multiple challenges. So anyway, these are going to count for that for both. Worked. So this is my 19th century classic. My 20th century classic I don't have yet. I'll either get it from the library or find it used or something when I decide I'm ready to read it, which will probably be this summer, and that is The Moviegoer by Walker Percy. This one is from 1961, so my definition of a classic is it's basically 50 years old, so that's plenty old. And I've heard good things about this for a while, and it keeps popping up in I would like to read it. I have no idea what it's about, but I've heard good things about Walker Percy, and I've never read him before, so I would like to do that also. The next work is a classic by a female author, and so guess what? We're gonna read more George Eliot. So for this one I chose Romola just because it was the next one after after The Mill on the Floss, and also it's about a woman, although they're all kind of about women. This one has a woman's name as the title, so it seems like a double whammy. Okay, number 4 is a classic in translation, and this is one of the challenges that I might have to shift eventually because I picked either one or the 2 books I picked for this challenge are gigantic. So I'm not gonna necessarily read both of them unless some kind of miracle happens and I just am really feeling it. But I'm either gonna read Kristen Lavren's Daughter by Sigrid Undset, which is technically 3 novels. And I have just been hearing great things about this book for quite a while, and it is a tome. I actually started it and got 152 pages in. apparently. This is about a woman who lives in medieval Sweden. Her name is Kristin Lavransdatter, and it's just about her life. So it starts when she's a child, and it follows her until she is an old woman through all of her joys and sorrows and all of the things. And it just sounds so interesting, and I'd really like to try to get to it this year. Just anyway, it's been on my TBR for a long time, and so either that one or The Brothers Karamazov, I'm not actually sure how to pronounce it, by Fyodor Dostoevsky. This is another one that I started and then burned out on, 67 pages into it. And I've read a part from towards the end that's often excerpted for high schools, but I have never read the whole thing. And this is a book about three brothers, and it's also kind of philosophically questioning like life and faith and all kinds of things, and I've heard great things about it, and it seems like one of those classics that you should just kind of read if you're interested in reading classics. And I haven't read a long Dostoevsky. The only Dostoevsky I've finished is Notes from Underground. So after reading Anna Karenina this year and really liking it, I really want to try to get to Dostoevsky in 2019, and so that is another option for the book in translation. But again, it's quite long. It's not as long as Kristin Lavransdatter, so this one might be more likely, but maybe it's less readable. I don't really know. So it'll depend mostly on my mood, I think, when I get to a place during the year where I can really just sit with a very long, complicated book. Prompt number 5 is a classic comic novel, and I've heard a lot of good things about Stella Gibbons's Cold Comfort Farm, which is apparently like the pastoral English novel but parodied, and it sounds really funny, and I've been reading a lot of pastoral English novels, so I would definitely be familiar with a lot of the tropes that she's making fun of. So that's the one that I am hoping to get to, and again, I don't have a copy. I'll either get one from the library or buy a used copy when I get there. I didn't want to have a ton of unread books floating around my apartment anymore, so I'm gonna wait to buy some of these until I'm actually ready to read them. Prompt number 7 is a very long classic. I'll either read the book that I didn't get to for the classic in translation, because both of those are very long, or I'll count Daniel Deronda for this. Daniel Deronda is Eliot's final novel, and it is 750 pages, which certainly counts for a very long novel. Number 8 is a classic novella, and for this I will read whatever the next of Dickens's Christmas novellas is. So Dickens, over 5 years, wrote 5 Christmas novellas, starting with A Christmas Carol, and it was just so successful that he kept doing it. And so this year I'm reading the second one, which is The Chimes, I think, and I'm just not sure which of the others is next, but I have all of them in a really charming 2-volume set from Penguin that's old, and I'm not gonna go get it because I would have to stand up and that's too much work. So that I'll read that in December next year. A classic from the Americas. So I'm reading actually not a lot of American books. Some of the greatest hits American classics like I've read because of grad school. So I decided to pull one off of my TBR that I've just been wanting to get to for a long time, and that's Wide Sargasso Sea by Jean Rhys. This is about Mr. Rochester's first wife, Bertha, and it sort of tries to tell her story and humanize her a little bit, because she's just like the crazy mad woman in the attic in Jane Eyre. And I meant to read this after I read Jane Eyre this summer, but I just never got to it, so I think this would be a great one to read, and it's set in the West Indies. It's also not very long. Yeah, it's only 112 pages. So that'll be great. I've tried to balance, since there's some really long books on here, like the Eliot works, even the shorter ones are like 500 pages. I wanted to balance it out with some shorter things. The next thing is to read a classic from Africa, Asia, or Oceania. I had a little bit of trouble with this one just because I'm not as familiar with the works, but I'm excited that it's here because I would like to read more broadly outside of the Western sphere. So I initially thought I would read The Tale of Genji, which is one that I've been wanting to read. It's been called the first novel, and it was written by a female courtier in the 1200s in Japan, and it sounds really interesting. However, it's another chunker, and I wasn't sure if it was really a good idea to throw that on there. So it's on my Classics Club long reads list, and so I might get to it eventually, but I think what I'm actually going to read is this book, The Sound of the Mountain, by Yasunari Kawabata, I think is how his name is pronounced. I bought this a while ago when I was looking for Western or non-Western literature to teach, and it didn't fit my criteria for that, so I didn't finish it. Again, I got like, I don't know, 20% into it or something, and then I had to put it down to move on to other things, but I have really been wanting to read it, and so this seems like the perfect chance. It's from 1970, so technically it's 49 years old instead of 50, but we're just gonna fudge that line a little bit. Nobody cares. And also it's vastly shorter, and the font is actually pretty large, so I should be able to read that one quickly, and that'll balance out the length of this TBR a little bit. The next two I haven't quite decided, so I'll talk about a couple of the books that I'm thinking about and get back to you. Some of it's just because I'm kind of a mood reader, and I'm not sure which of the books that I have kind of in mind would fit for this and this particular challenge, which is number 11, a classic from a place that you've lived. So I've lived quite a number of places because my dad was in the military, and also I went to school in Boston, and so I have lots of options, which is awesome, but also I don't actually know what to read. So not only could I read something from the American South, I could read something from Germany, which could be interesting. So I feel like I need to do a little bit of research to just see what I actually want to read. A book that comes to mind is Carson McCullers' The Heart is a Lonely Hunter. McCullers was a Georgia writer, and I did a little bit of work with her in college, but I never read any of her full-length works. We read her short works, and so that could be really interesting. There are some Texas writers that I could explore. There were a lot of writers from Massachusetts that I could read, including some interesting women. So we'll just have to kind of see what I feel like. And also, this goes along with the next one, which is a classic play. I'll probably read one of Shakespeare's works. But the other thing is that I don't have my course lists for next semester yet, and so I'm waiting to see what's on there before I decide what to put onto this list, because I don't want there to be doubles. I want these books to be ones that I'm not reading, and I'm taking a class in American literature, and I'm also taking a class of plays. It's like theatrical history, and we're reading a lot of classic plays. So I want to see what's on that list before I decide what to put onto these two things. So I should know those in another week or two probably, and then I can determine more accurately what I'll actually be reading for those. Something from Shakespeare, or maybe the Oresta by Aeschylus, which is an ancient Greek trilogy of plays. I have some Christopher Marlowe that I could get to. I have some George Chapman that I could get to. So there's lots of options. I'm just waiting to see what's on the lists. So that is my Back to the Classics 2019 challenge. I'm really excited about that and about the opportunity to just kind of read broadly across time and also kind of around the world a little bit and get out of my very focused reading for school. I think it's a pretty good list. If anything, I will have to switch out some books that are a little bit shorter just so that I can actually accomplish it, but I'll see kind of where I am at the beginning of the fall semester next year. I just don't know how my reading's gonna go really, which is part of the reason that I've made kind of vague goals for the rest of the year. If you'd like to join in on this, you can find all the information in the description below. So that's it for this video, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye!